I uncovered the haunted truth behind the Philip experiment, and now it follows me everywhere. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, a chill rushed through me, like ice-cold fingers dancing down my spine. My normal life shattered into pieces, engulfed by something dark, something alive. It took just one look inside. Dust hung in the air, clinging to every surface, and shadows lurked, whispering secrets of the past. The room felt colder than the depths of winter, a penetrating cold that gripped my bones. Just another investigation, I had told myself. But curiosity turned my weekend plans into a nightmare. I found the Philip experiment, a supposed paranormal hoax conjured by a group of scientists long ago. Yet standing in that forgotten space, the air thickened, heavy with a sense of foreboding. The walls seemed to pulse, echoing the tragic tales of failed experiments and tormented spirits that echoed from the past. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling, like reluctant breaths. I strained to listen, my heart thudding in my chest. It wasn't just the wind. No, it felt like something was slinking closer, quietly inching forward. I shifted, but the shadows danced mischievously, flickering against the walls as if mocking my fear. I could almost taste the terror, bitter and metallic. My hands trembled, fingers clutching my phone like a talisman, the glare from its screen a meager shield against the dark. The room began transforming, its shape shifting under the weight of an unseen presence. Objects creaked, furniture groaned, and the air thickened. I could feel every molecule vibrating with restless energy. What had I awakened? Outside, the sun was setting, casting long, grasping shadows that seemed to crawl their way into the house. Despite my rational mind, panic flooded me. Why did I come here? Some questions are better left unanswered. I turned for the exit, but the door slammed shut louder than thunder, echoing in the small room. My breath quickened. There was no escape. A chill whispered through the darkness, "Stay." Then, just as I prepared to scream, it appeared. A figure, a blur, a shape edging out from the shadows, loomed large. My heart stopped. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I could barely think, could barely breathe, as the world narrowed to that moment. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The apparition emerged fully, its features undulating like smoke in a breeze. The face was hollow, a dark vortex sucking in the light around it, its eyes two deep pits of shadow. I involuntarily stepped back, though the wall was pressing against me, and my heart raced to escape the grip of its gaze. It extended an arm towards me, fingers elongating unnaturally, tapering into pointed claws that gleamed with something ominous. Was it blood? Time stood still. The whispers escalated into a cacophony, dark words slithering into my mind. "Join us. Join us," echoed like a grotesque serenade, wrapping around my thoughts and squeezing. The sound throbbed against my temples, the persistence of their demand echoing in my bones. A surge of nausea rose within me. This was no mere ghost, it was a living memory, a fragment of the past that had been forcibly awakened. My legs finally responded, and I threw myself toward the door, but an invisible force barricaded me. The apparition's eyes morphed, swirling into the remnants of countless tortured souls, each one filled with sorrow and anger. My own soul recoiled, and I screamed, a raw sound that clawed its way from my throat, splintering the air with desperation. Just as the darkness reached for me, the room flashed with light, blindingly bright. In that stunned second, I glimpsed strange symbols carved into the walls, glowing as if they were alive. They pulsed with each beat of my heart, spelling something I couldn't fathom. Were they the key to my escape or the cause of my doom? And in that moment, the door swung wide, releasing a waft of paralyzing frost. A gust of wind surged into the room, howling through like a raging beast. Orange light flooded in, cutting through the darkness, yet it was too late. The figure lunged at me with impossible speed. I darted through the open door, the cold biting at my heels, but just as my foot hit the hallway floor, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the room, but standing in a vast expanse of misty terrain, drenched in twilight. The ground beneath me felt wrong, like it was pulsating with a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. Shapes swirled in the fog, shadows of the past reaching out, beckoning me to join them. Panic clawed at my throat as I scanned my surroundings, but the oppressive silence was suffocating. "Hello?" My voice faltered, swallowed by the mists. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket, a desperate reminder of the real world. Gripping it tightly, I fought back the encroaching dread. Ahead, I could see faint flickers of light, a glimmer of hope, or another trap. With no choice, I forged forward. Each step seemed to draw me deeper into their realm, as the hazy shadows twisted into figures of the long-gone victims of the Philip experiment, their eyes hollow, pleading, yet accusing, as they floated through my path. My heart pounded as I reached the first glow, finding a mirror propped against an overgrown tree. With a racing pulse, I approached it. The reflection was not my own, it was the figure, lurking close, maliciously smiling, its claws extending toward me from the other side of the glass. I felt a familiar chill in the air, and in that moment of horror, I understood this wasn't just a reflection, it was a doorway. But before I could pull away, tentacles of darkness shot from the surface, latching onto my wrists, yanking me closer to the glass. That I screamed, the mirror rippling as the figure on the other side laughed, an ominous sound that echoed in every corner of the twilight sky. I could feel reality slipping, fraying at the edges. The laughter multiplied, inhuman and insatiable, and then, through the chaos, I heard it, a voice, as clear as a bell, breaking through my fog of terror. "Free us!" The mists thickened, the shadows consolidated, and in that last moment, everything went quiet. An unbearable weight pressed against my chest. I wasn't alone anymore. The ground quaked beneath me, and a surge of voices erupted in a chilling chorus, shouting, "Join us! Join us!" I looked down. My feet were no longer on solid ground. I was being pulled beneath the surface, deeper into the void, as I realized with horror there was no escape. The door had closed behind me, and I was the next to be drawn into their world. As the light faded, the reflection in the mirror smiled wider than ever. Suddenly, I felt the sensation of slipping away, falling through the veil, the whispers turning into a roar. And then I was gone. The darkness enveloped me, a shroud that threatened to consume every thought, every flicker of identity. Reality twisted and warped until nothing felt familiar. A primal fear clawed at my sanity. The void whispered, coiling around me like a serpent. I felt like a marionette, my strings cut, dangling helplessly in a realm of shadows. But then, a rush of air jolted me back, a breath of life amidst the suffocating blackness. I was no longer in the ominous twilight but sprawled on a cold, hard surface, the floor of the very facility I had tried to escape. Confusion washed over me like a tide. The walls seemed taller, more oppressive, the air thick with despair. Each heartbeat echoed, reverberating in this desolate place like a funeral mourned by the long-silenced. Desperately, I scrambled to my feet, the remnants of the darkness still clinging to me, a phantom presence reluctant to leave. A distant clatter broke the silence, sending jolts of panic surging through me. I knew I had to move, to get out before whatever lingered in this accursed building found me again. As I moved through the crumbling corridors, a fear-laden chill settled on my skin. The once sterile rooms were now shrouded in decay, peeling wallpaper revealing grotesque faces beneath, twisted in eternal agony. The echoes of past experiments lingered, like ghosts trapped in their own faded memories. I stumbled across a dimly lit observation room. The glass was fractured, distorting the view beyond. Scraps of paperwork littered the desk, hastily scrawled notes hinting at unspeakable horrors. Phase 2, integration subjected to field exposure results inconclusive. My stomach turned at the implications. They hadn't just experimented on the souls who entered, they had merged their darkness with something unfathomable. I could feel it around me, the shadows alive with energy, whispering, probing, hungry for release. Footsteps echoed in the distance. My heart raced. I was no longer alone. Who, or what, wandered these forsaken halls? I darted behind a partition as the sound drew closer. The force of the scent of decay seeped through the air, a foul blend of rust and rot. A figure passed, cloaked in an inky blackness that seemed too deep for the dim light. The contours of a face masked by shadows moved in a ghastly dance as they spoke in tones that hummed with a nightmarish whisper. They're not alone, not anymore. The connections take root. Their voice resonated with a haunting familiarity, a chilling reminder of the apparition that haunted me. I pressed myself against the walls, trying to make myself smaller, while terror bloomed like a pit in my chest. Would this be my fate too, ground to dust in the relentless yearning of countless trapped souls? In a fit of courage, I lunged from my hiding place, darting toward the nearest exit. Each step felt like a promise of salvation until I caught sight of a mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, a familiar reflection flickering within it. There it was, the figure, this time polished into clarity. Its eyes bore into me, a swirling chaos of those I had encountered, souls that had merged within it, each one reflecting anguish and longing. Then, with a jarring realization, I saw not just the figure, but the foreshadowed shadows creeping around it, shapes gathering, multiplying behind the glass as though the mirror was a portal gathering an army of the lost. Join us, they murmured in unison, a chorus of despair that clutched at my mind like a vice. I staggered back, only to feel the oppressive weight of presence closing in, pressing me toward the glass. That I turned to run, but a cold gust of wind surged through the corridor, pushing me back. The laughter echoed again, the same dissonant cackle, bloated with hunger, creeping from the depths of the mirror. It wasn't just a memory, it was a warning, and I could feel something clawing at my conscience, promising to shatter the final barrier between my essence and theirs. In a moment of sheer will, I swung the door open and barreled out into the courtyard that lay beyond, a graveyard of twisted metal and scraps of forgotten dreams. My breath came in ragged gasps. But I was not alone here. The whispers had followed. A horde of figures emerged from the ashes, their hollow eyes fixated on me, each one a testament to the terror birthed in this very place. Free us, or join us, they echoed in unison, the chilling melody weaving around me like chains. That I stumbled backward, frantically scanning for an escape, when I felt it, the ground beneath me shifting rhythmically, pulsating like the heartbeat of some monstrous creature awakening from its slumber. With a growl, the earth cracked open, a chasm gaping wide beneath my feet. The void yawned forth, hungry and insatiable, as the shadows surged toward me with outstretched hands, claiming the last breath of my hope. Join us, they hissed, and the edge of the chasm loomed like the mouth of despair, and I felt myself tipping forward, surrendering to the unknown as the ground fell away. And just as I was about to plummet into the darkness, I glimpsed the mirror one last time, my own horrified reflection, the entity behind me, its claws brushing my shoulder, pulling me into the depths as laughter erupted from deep within the void. Then everything went black. When my senses returned, a disorienting sight assaulted my vision. I was no longer in the courtyard, nor was I in the facility's confines. Instead, I found myself standing in a sterile white room, suffocatingly bright, devoid of life yet brimming with an unshakable presence. The walls, lacking definition, pulsed rhythmically like the organ of some giant, wounded creature. I blinked, struggling to make sense of my surroundings, but the air tasted stale and oppressive, as if imbued with the remnants of tormented souls. The memories of the gaping chasm lingered like a shadow in my mind, an echo of the depths I had narrowly escaped. I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me, a sensation that skirted the edges of paranoia. Had I truly escaped, or had I merely traded one hell for another? Trembling, I stepped forward, my footfalls muffled in the emptiness. A mirrored surface stretched before me, ensnaring my gaze. Within its depths, I perceived movement, a multitude of figures trapped within its confines, all wearing expressions of desperate longing, their mouths forming silent screams that echoed in the corners of my mind. The familiarity of their faces chilled me to the bone, each one a reflection of those lost souls I had glimpsed before. "Help us," they seemed to plead, their movements synchronizing in a distorted dance of anguish. A surge of fear climbed up my spine. I turned from the mirror, the sound of shuffling feet against the sterile floor echoing like a metronome, reminding me that I was not alone. Rounding a corner, I came upon a door. Desperation clawed at my throat. I wrenched it open, revealing a narrow hallway, choked with shadows that seemed to twist and elongate with every heartbeat. A soft, almost melodic humming filled the air, beckoning me deeper into the gloom. But as I moved forward, the whispers began anew, weaving a tapestry of dread that wrapped around me like barbed wire. "Come closer, let us play," they lured, the voices a sharpened blend of sweetness and malice, using familiar tones that I had once cherished. A memory emerged, fragmented and twisted, laughter from careless days, faces of friends blended into ghastly distortions. My strides faltered beneath the weight of it all. I could feel the ground tremble beneath me, thrumming with an intense energy as if the walls themselves were alive. That I pressed on, too afraid to give in to the voice that sought to pull me under. Suddenly, a door at the far end swung open, and from within emerged a figure shrouded in annoyance, an unsettling calm washing over them amid the chaos of light and shadow. The moment I caught a glimpse of their face, my breath hitched as recognition clawed at my chest. It was Dr. Landry, lead researcher of the Philip experiment, a ghost from my nightmares wearing the mask of sanity. "I've been waiting," he said, the smooth baritone oddly soothing, as if he were speaking to a lost child. "You've had quite the journey. I hoped you'd find your way back here." "Back?" I stammered, desperation clawing at my throat. "What do you mean? I thought I escaped." A smirk twisted his lips, but it was disconnected from any warmth of humanity. "A misconception. You see, the experiment was never confined to that site. It never ended, it expanded, reached out. You are part of that continuation now. You can't escape what you've become." "Haven't I suffered enough?" I shouted, belligerence slashing through my fear. "I can't be one of those things." His expression shifted slightly, though his gaze remained cold. "You've already joined them. They crave what you are, as your essence is now intertwined with theirs. Feel it. Embrace it." The humming crescendoed, enveloping me. I felt tendrils of shadow grace my skin, creeping like ivy, pulling me into their collective despair. The walls pulsated with every heartbeat, vibrant and connected, merging the anguish of countless trapped souls, a sinister symphony of suffering. "No!" I screamed, backing away, but the shadows clung tighter and closer, thrumming through the floor. They surged forth, and I was staggered by the realization that my movements were no longer my own. I was caught in a gravitational pull toward Dr. Landry, the mirror behind him flickering ominously with visions of my many selves, all in agony, all merged as one. As the shadows wrapped around me, squeezing the breath from my lungs, a chilling laugh echoed from behind the mirror, a sound so harrowing and familiar. At that instant, I recognized the face among the countless reflections. It was mine, but twisted, engulfed by shadows, beckoning me closer with a finger curled in seductive invitation. "Join us," the voice chimed, resonating like a bell tolling the end of a reckoning. My heart raced, tears streaking my cheeks as I fought against the engulfing darkness. But suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled violently, fissuring as the mirror splintered and shattered, cascading shards of glass like falling stars. Into the chaos, Dr. Landry extended his hand, a glimmer of invitation laced with malice. The world fractured around me, a rift tearing through space. With a final, piercing scream, I felt my soul poised on the edge of oblivion, teetering between joining the relentless mass of shadows or breaking free into a hollow truth that awaited beyond the cracks of the mirror's edge. And then, just as that haunting laughter swallowed me whole, I was thrust into a deeper void, the faces of the lost swirling around me, waiting for their escape as darkness yawned wide, ready to consume once more. The darkness enveloped me like a cold shroud, but it was the silence that strangled my senses. After the dizzying plunge, I landed on a floor that felt like cold, slippery flesh alive beneath me, pulsing with sinister intent. I staggered to my feet, breath coming in quick, shallow gasps, my heart a frantic drum beating against the heavy silence. The world around me was shrouded in opaque shadows, the memories of Dr. Landry and the wretched faces pulsing behind glass still etched sharply in my mind. "Get up," a voice hissed from the depths, slithering around me like smoke. "You shouldn't be here, but you must be. We're waiting." I spun, frantically searching for the source, but the shadows seemed to merge and part with a mocking intelligence. Fractured dreams layered upon one another, creating a cacophony of whispers both inviting and ominous. Panic surged through me as I stumbled down the slimy corridor, desperately seeking light, seeking escape. As I pressed on, the walls began to morph, twisting into contorted visages that grinned and wept within the confines of their surface, eyes wide, echoing the silent screams of despair. I felt their pressing presence behind me, an unseen congregation drawn to my awakening. Their energy crackled, surging up my spine, merging with the remnants of my soul already caught in the web of the Philip experiment. Dread pooled thick in my stomach when suddenly, a flicker of light caught my eye, a doorway emerging from the depths of the gloom. I didn't think, I bolted for it, shoving the door open and bursting into a cavernous chamber, illuminated by a pulsating crimson glow emanating from a large, obsidian altar at its center. My breath hitched as I took in the atrocity laid before me. The altar was slick with a dark liquid, gleaming under the ruby light like a pool of fresh blood. Surrounding it were figures bound in chains, their forms skeletal and gaunt, whispers escaping from parched lips as they clawed at the air, reaching out for something unheard. A shudder raced through me as I recognized the faces. They were not only the lost souls I had seen before, but also faces that belonged to those I thought I had forever left behind. "Help us," they begged in a chorus, their hands straining against their shackles, faces filled with a yearning that rippled through me, a raw ache that urged me forward. My heart pounded in sync with their desperate pleas, a harmony of terror and guilt blending into a suffocating weight. Why couldn't I help them? I reached out a hand, instinctually wanting to touch them, but hesitation froze me in place. The shadows behind me churned, massing into an insatiable tide. I felt them pulling at the edges of my very essence, gnawing at my resolve. "Don't listen," the voice urged again, more insistent, intertwining with the desperate cries, maliciously urging me to fall. As my resolve faltered, a loud crack echoed from above, drawing my attention to the jagged ceiling. What appeared to be a swirling vortex of darkness loomed ominously overhead, twisting and writhing as though it demanded sustenance from the cries below. From the depths of that tumbling void emerged an echo, a face that belonged neither to this realm nor the corporeal world, gaunt and warped, its eyes burning with a fevered hunger. "You owe a debt," it rasped, its voice resembling the screeching of metal on metal. "You belonged here long before you grasped the shackle of your own soul." The shadows gathered more fiercely as the voice wrapped around me, promising dark truths and offering a glimpse into twisted realities where I belonged. The faces surrounding the altar fell silent, their eyes widening in horror. "Don't give in!" they screamed, their mouths forming a soundless warning, fingers clawing at their own chains, all of them knowing the terrible choice before me. Every heartbeat thrummed loud in my ears as I faced the vortex with terror and sorrow. I was torn between helping the eternally damned or succumbing to my fate, one that inevitably drifted into the hungry maw of shadow. The energy around me began to swirl wildly, pulling me closer to the altar, the chains rattling in the night like ominous bells. "Join us," the voices hissed. "Or become one of us." In a moment consumed by turmoil, I could feel my will shatter like glass. The shadows surged to crush me, pulling with the ferocity of a raging tempest. I toppled towards the altar as a final, soul-tearing scream echoed from my own mouth, and then, with every shred of my essence trailing in the wake of the darkness, I felt the long-forgotten memories crashing back, friendships, laughter, faces I had loved and lost. A sudden spark ignited within me. I had a choice, but as I reached for the glowing light above, I felt a sharp tug at my ankle, reality blurring as I was hurled backward. Emerging from within the altar, a hand reached out, a familiar, skeletal hand that could only belong to me. Time froze as I gazed down into the abyss. My other self clawed desperately, a mirror image twisted in horror, eyes wide with longing and betrayal. "Don't let me go!" it screamed, as the darkness surged, dragging us both back into the shadows. The darkness cloaked me like a thick fog, each breath a struggle against the oppressive weight closing in. I felt the pull of the tethered hand, the mirror image of me, fingers clawing at the air with an urgency that sent chills racing down my spine. I was caught in a delicate balance, tiptoeing on the thin line between the ethereal shadows and my own battered humanity. "Let go!" I shouted, though the command rang hollow, drowned by the sinister whispers swirling around the altar. The other me continued to writhe in agony, its expression a haunting mirror of my own fear, the realization that our separation was imminent. "No!" the voice shrieked, a cacophony of despair filling my ears, each note a lament for a life I had once lived. "You can't leave me!" In that blinding moment of choice, the entities surrounding the altar surged forward with a ferocity that shook the foundations of this haunting place. The shadows wrapped around my limbs like tendrils of fog, constricting. I could feel them pulling me closer, their chilling presence filling every crevice of my mind, whispering promises of power, of freedom from the weight of the past. That I stumbled backward, the altar and the wretched faces of the damned now contorted by shadows that pulsed with their own malevolence. "They're here for you," they screamed, their voices intertwining and building into a harrowing symphony that reverberated through the chamber. "Don't take on our torment. Don't become like us." Just as the dark tendrils threatened to engulf me, I felt a fleeting warmth radiate from the vortex above, a sliver of hope or perhaps a tether to something brighter. The light cut through the foreboding shadows, illuminating the chamber with an unearthly glow. The haunting faces distorted with a mix of fear and urgency. "Fight it!" they urged, but their warnings blared past my consciousness like a distant storm. With a sudden resolve forged from the ashes of despair, I focused on the luminous tendril. "I choose!" I cried aloud, clenching my eyes shut against the darkness and focusing on the fragments of joyful memories buried deep within. Friends' laughter echoed in my mind, the warmth of their love cradling me from the inside. Each cherished moment pulled me back from despair, forging an invisible shield against the encroaching shadows. A deafening roar erupted from the vortex above, as if my declaration had awakened something ancient and wildly angry. The ground trembled beneath me, bricks and stone quaking in an angry chorus of rebellion. I was lifted from the trap of shadows, chaotically spiraling upward toward the glowing tendril, the essence of light that had called out to me, pulling with an intensity that was both alluring and terrifying. But just as I broke free from the grasp of the chains, I felt the unbreakable pull of my other self. "Don't leave me!" it howled, the voice twisted in a mixture of desperation and rage. I turned, feeling that tether connect us in a way that shattered everything I thought I knew about myself, the truth that cursed me, the bond that could unleash untold horrors. As I strained towards the light, it flickered, dimming like a candle in a gust. The shadows writhed, dark fingers reaching out, keenly aware of my faltering resolve. I could see fragments of faces materializing within their folds, lost souls I once knew, echoing the cries of betrayal that rose like an ominous wind. Suddenly, I was plunged into freezing darkness again, the light snuffed out entirely. I felt the cold seep into my bones as the vortex roared to life, the furious energy enveloping me entirely. Those haunted echoes morphed into an enraged chant, a lustful desire to consume me whole. Then, amidst the chaos, I saw it, a flickering shimmer just out of reach, tantalizingly close. The figure, the grotesque reflection of my being, twisted and shrieked with desperation. "You can't escape me!" it screamed, fury and loss converging into a primal force. With a jolt, I was thrown to the floor, the cold flesh beneath me shuddering in awakening. The altar surged with an insatiable hunger, dark oil pooling around my body, dousing me in an unholy baptism that stung like fire against my skin. I was trapped, suffocating under both the weight of my past and the piercing grasp of my reflection. I gasped for breath as the shadows coalesced, forming something more substantial, more malevolent, a face materializing from the gloom, one that I recognized. It was Dr. Landry, or a distorted version of him, his eyes gleaming with a chilling red glint that spoke of unyielding vengeance. "You can never truly escape," he hissed, shadows taking shape around him. You are bound to the darkness, you and your other half are forever entwined in the scar of the Philip experiment. The air thickened between us, a taut string pulled to its breaking point, and just as the darkness began to swarm again, I felt a final surge of power crackling through me. My real self collided violently against the current of despair, splitting apart the shadows that dared to engulf me, but the image of Dr. Landry flickered, distorting like a reflection on the surface of disturbed water. You'll regret this, he warned, the shadows becoming a tempest, ready to strike. And then, with an explosion of power, the world around me dissolved, blood-chilling laughter ringing out a laugh that threatened to shatter my very soul. I was sealed in darkness again, trapped in a liminal space where time lost its meaning. But then I felt it, the familiar tug of that skeletal hand, pulling me back into the void, back into the horror. Join me or become part of their curse, it whispered. The choice loomed heavier than ever against the encroaching shadows, more sinister than I could ever imagine. And I was running out of time. Chilled to the bone, I gasped for air, realizing the pulsating darkness had devoured the light and any semblance of hope. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of despair echoing realities I could scarcely comprehend. Each anguished plea from the shadows felt as if they were scraping the edges of my sanity, itching to pull me into their depths. The skeletal hand continued to tug at me, urging me, beckoning me toward an unfathomable fate. Embrace what you've become, it whispered, its voice slithering through my mind like a serpent, coiling around each fragile thought. You think you can resist the truth? You think you can fight the darkness within? The words seeped through the cracks of my foundation, tormenting me with their twisted allure. The phantom image of Dr. Landry loomed like a specter in the recesses of my mind. You are forever tethered to the Philip experiment, he taunted, the resonance of his laughter echoing in a dissonant symphony that coiled around my senses. Knowledge will not save you. It will only bind you further. I stumbled back, trying to shield myself from the visions that surged to life around the cavern. Fractured memories depicted blood-stained images of the experimentation's men and women chained to tables, eyes wide with fear as wicked laughter filled the sterile lab. I clenched my jaw, forcing the horror away, but it burrowed deeper, seeping into every fold of my mind. How could I have been part of such vile acts? Yet it wasn't just the memories that unnerved me, it was the shadows that danced, constantly shifting and pulsing, eager to rootedly entwine themselves in my chaos. They whispered sweet promises of power, allure, and freedom from the weight of both the past and the new burdens that were careening toward me just out of sight. They will take you too, the shadows whispered. Join us. Become one with the lost souls who yearn to be whole again. A rush of fear propelled me further into the depths of the cavernous wreckage. I could feel the shadows pursuing, closing in, keenly aware that my fear was their sustenance. I turned on my heel just as I spotted glimpses of my other self lurking in the edges, its hollow eyes gazing back at me both remorseful and murderous. No! I shrieked, attempting to push it from my mind, but the echo of its laughter hollowed me out. I won't give in. I clawed at my temples, attempting to regain control. Yet the grip of the darkness felt more solid now, as if it were curling around my throat, choking whatever light remained within me. In a desperate attempt, I reached for the memories, pushing desperately against the encroaching shadows. The faces of loved ones filled my mind, my sister's laughter, my mother's gentle embrace, my father's pride. I will fight, I stammered, my voice breaking into the symphony of despair. But with each invocation of light, the shadows retaliated, a shrieking tempest that threatened to drown my resolve. But as the tide of the darkness rose, something unexpected broke through. A flicker, a spark of red that sliced through the suffocating absence of hope. I turned, heart racing, as the pulse of a crimson orb emerged, swaying precariously, illuminating the festering dread. It was alive and filled with a sinister hunger as it floated closer, tinged with a promise of knowledge, the darker truth behind the Philip experiment. With desperation clawing my insides, I reached for it, the temptation unraveling my will. Perhaps this knowledge was what I needed to understand the terrible truth of my existence. Hands trembling, I grasped at the orb, and a rush of memories surged through me more than I could process, emotions blurring into one another, grief, ecstasy, pain, and hope, and there, through the chaos, I caught a fleeting glimpse of the others' fellow subjects whispering from their shaded voids, limbs contorted in agony as they reached out, begging for release. "Help us!" they cried, their voices laced with the energy of a wounded beast. "We are fragments of your creating." The orb exploded with violent energy, disassembling my boundaries and seeping into my soul. I was bombarded by the memories of lost lives tortured in the name of science, an onslaught of emotions that threatened to shatter who I thought I was. I saw Dr. Landry again, but now his image was distorted in the haze, half real, half spectral, an insidious energy churning behind his blood-red eyes. "You will take your place among us," he growled, the shadows rallying behind him like an army prepared for war. The whisper of anguish morphed into a vengeful howl, a siren song that echoed my doom. Suddenly, I felt a presence looming behind me. The skeletal hand, with its cold fingers digging into my back, pulled me deeper into the void. "You will not escape your destiny. You will join the ranks of the damned," it hissed, echoing with the voices of those lost. Looking ahead, the walls began to dissolve, revealing a gravestone-laden abyss where whispers turned to screeches and shadows coiled like serpents, ready to strike. Just as the souls began to draw closer, and the truth unfolded before me, an overpowering thought crashed through the chaotic storm. What if it's not me they want, but the darkness that resides within me? And with that thought, terror clawed at my insides, restraining me in place. As the skeletal hand dragged me closer to the abyss, I knew I was teetering on the edge of my greatest nightmare, trapped between my own existence and the ghostly humanity that sought to claim me. Then, with a final haunting realization, the world shattered. A harrowing scream pulsed through the void as if the darkness itself had been summoned, so palpable that it seared my very essence. And just as I thought I would be consumed, the pull of the shadows tightened, but I found I was not alone. The hand released my throat, its grip slipping away, and the darkness roared, revealing something far more terrifying than I could have ever anticipated. It was reaching for me, not just to consume, but to take me back. The air crackled with a malevolence that sent shivers racing down my spine. I stood there, in the gaping maw of the abyss, my breath hitching with disbelief. The shadowy force that had released its grip now coalesced into something more grotesque, more real, a swirling mass, an entity of pure dread, writhing with the faces of the damned. It beckoned to me, its whispers grew louder, promising secrets and truths I yearned to uncover, yet curiosity, I realized, was a double-edged sword. Each heartbeat thudded in unison with the unsettling pulse of the entity as it spiraled closer, filling my lungs with the acrid scent of despair. The very air crackled under the weight of its malice, and frigid fingers brushed my skin, electrifying me with both terror and strange, unbidden allure. The orb of crimson light I had previously held flickered violently, desperately trying to pierce the thickness of shadows that now encased me. "Join us," it murmured, smoother now, more enticing. Their cries transformed into seductive whispers that curled around my mind, anchoring me in this nightmare. "We were once like you, too bright to be extinguished. But look around, do you not see? The truth has always been here, waiting for you to embrace it." Visions cracked through my consciousness, each more horrifying than the last. The cavern walls bled memories of torment, a forgotten child shrieking in the dark, her voice choked by the shadows, a family torn apart, their faces twisted in anguish as they reached out for an escape that would never come, and a laboratory rife with sorrow, blood pooling in corners while scientists danced like marionettes, joyfully manipulating their human toys. And there, among the chaos, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure, Dr. Landry, his eyes glowing with the venomous thrill of playing God. "You think you can erase your fate?" he cackled, the sound echoing against the walls of my fraying sanity, ricocheting off the very fibers of my being. "You are merely the vessel of our legacy, bound by the threads of our failure. Embrace the darkness, only then will you find your true power." I stumbled backward as the memories churned, mixing with my own fragmented reality. "No, I want," I cried, desperation punctuating my resistance. As I turned to flee deeper into the cavern, the shadows erupted around me, contorting into grotesque shapes that mirrored the agony of lost souls clinging to their unfinished stories. The walls pulsed as if alive, constricting around me, tightening coiling chains to my existence. In that moment of sheer panic, my surroundings morphed as the air thickened, infused with a sense of voyeurism. Shadows elongated and twisted, transforming into figures with gaping mouths tinged with crimson as if their own cries were never allowed to escape. I felt the earth tremble beneath my feet, resonating with the agonized suffocation of the past I had tried so hard to leave behind. Suddenly, the cavern's boundaries broke apart. A rift opened in the space where walls once stood, revealing a kaleidoscope of shifting nightmares and familiar faces, all those I once loved, now woven into the fabric of the darkness. My sister, hollow-eyed, reached toward me with a slender, lifeless hand. "Help us," she pleaded, the warmth of her voice tainted by the chill of the abyss. I could hear my mother's soft voice murmuring fractured lullabies and my father's imploring words, "Don't let them take you, please." Simultaneously, both chains of past affection and the sinister allure of the entity drew me as if yanking at my very essence. "They are a lie, nothing but remnants of who you once were. Embrace what you can truly become," the entity rasped, its voice coiling around my heart, squeezing with temptation. Just then, the orb rekindled, expanding with luminous energy, igniting the cavern walls with a fleeting hope. But as its light cascaded through the shadows, it revealed chilling visions of the subject's reflections like my own, hollow husks of humanity stripped bare, trapped in ceaseless anguish. Then, through the layers of despair, something deep within my core instinctively ignited. A flicker of defiance danced within me, the idea that maybe I could use this power, this horrifying knowledge, to shatter the illusion of my reality. But the shadows shrieked in anguish as if sensing my resolve, their cries swelling into a cacophony that vibrated through the cavern. The force they projected grew, wrapping tighter around me, pressing against my skin, mixing the alien energy swirling within. I bolted toward the rift, willing my legs to propel me forward, but the shadows swirled faster, darker. They clawed at the remnants of my humanity, digging deeper into my mind while reverberating the words I dreaded to contemplate. "That power is yours alone, but it will cost you what you hold dear." I lurched at the threshold, the overwhelming energy snapping at my heels when a single piercing truth clicked into place, a revelation unlike any before. What if, in seeking to help them, I was sealing my own fate? The flicker of hope within me dimmed, fear blossoming anew as realization stormed my heart. This darkness was not merely a force seeking to claim me, it was an embodiment of every choice I would make moving forward. As I teetered on the edge of that rift between worlds, a chorus of anguished cries erupted, mixing with Dr. Landry's excited cackle, his figure materializing beside the churning light. "It's time, child. Step into the truth, and be reborn." In a moment fraught with existential terror, my heart froze, teetering at the precipice of light and shadow. Just as I took a step forward, the ground shuddered, collapsing beneath my feet as tendrils of darkness reached out from the rift, entwining around my ankles, dragging me down into the unknown. "Join us. Your destiny awaits." They screamed, their guttural cries enveloped me, resonating with the despair that had replaced every inch of my being. I was plunged into the depths, succumbing, panic tightening its icy grip around my throat, knowing my final choice hung in the balance not just for me but for those who had suffered before. In that chilling moment, before total obliteration consumed me, a memory flickered through the chaos. The shadows vying for my soul were not just memories of torment but echoes of a twisted legacy still haunting to unearth the truth they had hidden, and on the cusp of the inky blackness, I caught a final breath, a single thought drumming like a heartbeat in my mind as darkness swept away my will. What have I become? The air was thick with the stench of despair, cloying and electric, as I plummeted into the abyss. The darkness swallowed me whole, consuming every shard of light, every whisper of hope. I spiraled down, my limbs tangled in the creeping tendrils of shadow that seemed to reach out, caressing me with the cold familiarity of forgotten nightmares. Then, abruptly, everything stopped. I landed softly on a surface that felt almost inviting, like long-lost memories woven together, but the sensation was deceiving. I pushed myself up, panting, heart racing, and stared into a vast expanse of shadow, swirling and writhing with a life of its own. It felt like a living thing, breathing around me, pulsing with despair and longing. My eyes adjusted, and I realized I was no longer in the cavern I'd fled for moments before. Instead, I was trapped in a cavernous void, echoes of distant cries reverberating into the ether. They were familiar, yet distorted like my sister's voice heard through an old, crackling radio. "Is this where you've come to find us?" she whispered, and I felt a shiver run through me. The shadows began to shift, congealing into forms I recognized. Figures emerged, ghostly and melancholic. Each one embodied pain, each face reminiscent of my own lineage, the lost souls of my ancestry, a family entangled in a legacy of horror that transcended death itself. I raised a trembling hand to one apparition, a woman whose features mirrored my own, her eyes hollow yet vibrantly alive with torment. "Mom?" I murmured, my voice barely audible over the rising tide of grief that enveloped us. "We are all that remains," she said, her voice echoing hollowly against the walls of this pit. "We linger in the in-between, forever bound by the sins that surround you. They are your inheritance." "Why?" I choked out, the weight of my question settling heavily on my chest. "Why can't I escape this?" "Because the truth dwells here," she replied, as the shadows twisted more violently, their every undulation telling the tale of our lineage, the sacrifices made, the promises broken, the experiments conducted in the name of progress. You must embrace it to unravel the curse. The air hummed with eerie energy as if something were awakening. I stumbled backward. Just then, the swirling mass of shadow began to erupt, its forms disintegrating into choking clouds, revealing specters of those who had come before me. Dr. Landry emerged from the mass, his eyes flickering with a ghastly delight, a puppet master reveling in the despair of those below. "Did you think you could break free?" he sneered, the shadows twisting around him like a cloak of despair. "Your family's remnants are bound to this existence. Your attempts to escape merely feed the darkness." I swallowed hard, dread creeping through my veins. The knowledge combined with despair settled over me. Our lineage had been twisted into a sinister experiment, a desperate grasp for power that chained us deeper into this abyss. "What have you done?" I cried, feeling the weight of generations pressing against my soul. "Nothing you weren't destined for," he laughed, circling me, advancing like a predator stalking its prey. "You are tethered to our failure, an unwilling participant in this tragedy of inherited darkness. But you can help us, if only you dare to embrace the power within." "Help you?" I whispered, my mind racing with confusion and anger. The sacrifices they had made were steeped in blood and sorrow. How could I bear to be a part of it? I refused to be a pawn. The ground beneath trembled with rage at my defiance, sending shockwaves that reverberated through the very fabric of the void. The shadows writhed, taking on monstrous forms, howling with a chilling harmony of fury and desperation. "You cannot run from what you are," they screamed, voices layered in anguish, a chaotic symphony of suffering, and then it hit me. The shadows were alive, driven by the energy of pain and fear. The maw of emptiness in which I found myself was a sentient entity, a reflection of my own heart. My thoughts delved deeper, spiraling into a realization that shattered any semblance of certainty. To fight them was to fight against myself, against the very truth that coursed through my veins. "Join us," they implored, their voices harmonizing into one haunting cry, a plea and a promise that seeped through every fragment of my being. "Become one with us, and the power of our legacy will be yours to wield." I felt the swirling intensity of their collective energy drawing closer. Memories flickered like fireflies, illuminating the depths of my mind, echoes of laughter that turned into cries of despair. In that moment of clarity, I understood what I must do to break the cursed chains binding us. Every broken promise, every dark moment could be rewritten if I was brave enough to embrace the dark truth of our legacy. With all my strength, I shouted back at them, "I want to be silenced. I'll reclaim our fate." The shadows paused, a deafening silence enveloping the void, and in that instant, I felt a surge of something powerful rising within me, a light forged from suffering and resolve, but before I could act, the darkness roared in fury, coiling around me with ferocity. The ground beneath me cracked wide open, and I was hurled downwards once again, spiraling into the depthless unknown, the roaring shadows closing in on either side, reaching out, longing to consume me and all my defiance. "Join us!" echoed through the chasm as I fell through the shadows, the voices widening into a crescendo of laughter. The abyss yawned below, promising further horrors, hauntings, and a truth I was destined to confront alone, or worse yet, with what lay waiting for me on the other side. Just as I clutched desperately at the threads of my sanity, a voice sliced through the chaos, echoing above the cacophony like a distant beacon, "Remember who you are, even as you lose your way." But then, in the heart-stopping instant before I plunged into oblivion, a chilling thought gripped me tightly. What if remembering was the very thing that cost me my soul? I stood in the dark, pulsating chamber, my body trembling as the final echoes of despair twisted around me. I was thrust into a maelstrom of voices, a cacophony of anguish that clawed at my sanity. Every whisper beckoned, taunting me, urging me to join the ranks of the damned, yet something deep within me screamed to resist. "You're not one of them." It reverberated, a desperate mantra building behind my clenched teeth. As I took in the endless shadows swirling around me, each flicker of a familiar face clawed at my heart, draining me of courage, yet igniting a flicker of determination. But would it be enough? It had to be. "You have power," the shadows reminded me in hushed tones, seductive and enticing. "Join us. Unleash it." Yet in the pit of my gut, I understood the truth: power birthed from pain was never meant to be wielded lightly. The darkness surrounding me was simply a grotesque echo of every decision I had ever made, every haunting reflection of the choices I had sought to outrun. What if I become what I fear the most? I whispered to the void, trembling. Then I remembered all the faces that surrounded me, those lost souls, each one wretched and terribly familiar. The layers of shadow began to peel back, revealing the stories behind every scream, a legacy shrouded in torment. They weren't merely haunting figures, they were echoes of my own lineage, their fates intertwined with mine, their despair pounding like a relentless drum against the walls of my mind. "Help us!" a chorus erupted, their cries rising into a haunting melody, threading through the very fabric of my being. They were calling for release, but how could I grant what I had not yet found for myself? "Embrace who you are," they rallied. This was about more than defiance, it was a reckoning. I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of their specters pushing against my soul, and with courage burgeoning through the fear, I made a decision. "No, I won't join you, nor will I transform into what you want." But before I could finish, I felt the force of the shadows coiling around my body, and the disembodied laughter rang through the chamber like a distorted gospel. "You don't have a choice." The altar of shadow quivered, and as tendrils of darkness reached for me, the memory of my sister's warm embrace surged through me, pulsing with strong emotion. "Fight back." An urgency tore through me, fueled by a fierce hope. I wouldn't let their pain rewrite my fate. The shadows howled in outrage as I shoved against their grasp, knowing I had mere moments before surrender. One final push, that flicker of light ignited within my heart: "You were never just a failure. You carry their legacy with you. You are more than their darkness." Suddenly, the swirling energy coalesced, swirling into the figure of Dr. Landry, who was still laughter, not just an apparition, but a manifestation of my fears and the knowledge I possessed. "You think you can escape the truth," he smirked, yet a hint of uncertainty glimmered in his eyes. "You are ours." Time blurred as I lunged forward, desperation igniting my senses. "This darkness cannot be my identity." I roared, and with primal strength, I swirled the tendrils around me into a vortex of energy, an intricate dance of despair and hope intertwining. I gathered the cries of my ancestors, the sorrow of those who had gone before me, channeling it into something potent, something that felt powerful yet frightening. Suddenly, Dr. Landry recoiled, his form oscillating as the darkness began to tremble, as if responding to my defiance. Waves of energy rippled, cascading through the air, enveloping me in a violent dance between light and shadow. "No!" he screeched, reaching out in a futile gesture. The momentum of the shadow churning beneath me transformed, pulling together in rhythms of resolve and clarity. "You can't escape your destiny." But it felt as though I could. With one last cry, I drew on every shred of power left within, unleashing a torrent of light that surged forth, obliterating the haunting voices, scattering them like ash in the wind. And in that tumult the faces began to shift, rearranging into something else entirely, a revelation of love and loss, their eyes alight with something I had not seen, the promise of freedom. Yet, in the midst of everything, something rushed back to me, the memory of the Philip experiment, and I understood, horrified. I had traded darkness for truth, but at what cost? As the kaleidoscope of shadows shattered around me, I was left staring into the abyss. The faces of my past grinned from the remnants like a distorted reflection, but it didn't end there. I felt a tug in my soul, stronger than before, a connection lingering like a dark birthright, as the shadows shrieked and pulsed, pulling from every threaded connection I had forged. My heart raced, desperation clawing at the edges of my consciousness as I fought to assert control. No more. I insisted. You do not define me. I define myself. But a dark smirk twisted Landry's features as shadows engulfed him, its laughter now an echoing chant. But your power lies with us. You cannot escape what you are. The horror is your inheritance. The walls began to close in, and suddenly the room shifted again, flaying apart until the echoes twisted into screams of countless lost souls. The sensation echoed bleakly in my mind as I fell backward into a fractured darkness, knowing I was at a precipice. With one final surge, I channeled every ounce of resistance I possessed, and burst forth into the shadows, determined to right my fate. But as I soared forth, the chilling realization struck me hard: the darkness was still alive. Its tendrils were waiting and watching, hungry for the next soul, ready to strike when the moment was ripe. In that vulnerable moment, a haunting truth gripped me. The horror didn't just follow me, it lingered, hiding in the corners of my being and blanketing my existence in shadow. And as I charged forward into the quivering unknown, I breathed heavy against the encroaching darkness. A single chilling thought echoed in the recesses of my mind: this is just the beginning. And so, as the echoes of the damned faded, I realized I had become forever intertwined with the shadows, destined to walk the line between light and dark, and the worst was yet to come.